welcome to the new MMR Trains and More YouTube channel.
All aboard.
Hello YouTube, Mark Preisler here, MMR Trains and More. Thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to go back into the world of HO scale and we're going to look at the Soo Line's lone SD9, number 2381. Kind of a locomotive of some fame on the Soo Line. Actually purchased as a Wisconsin Central locomotive. The 2381, as I say, the only one the Soo Line bought through the years. The idea of one diesel locomotive to replace one steam locomotive was still kind of stuck in their mind when they purchased this back in 1954. The locomotive was delivered with basically, as you see, half of a fuel tank to save weight, and the 6 axles spread out the locomotive's weight onto the lighter branch line rail. That at least was their thinking on it. It was certainly one of the lightest SD9s that any railroad had ever purchased, and yet for whatever reason it had a tremendous lugging ability. Slip wasn't a problem. Speed, forget about speed. It wasn't a speedy locomotive, but somehow General Motors EMD came up with something magic on here. And so the locomotive, although used on the Manitowoc branch line quite often through the years, also found its way down into Milwaukee, lugging what the Soo Line affectionately called their beer train from Shop's Yard in North Fond du Lac down to the Milwaukee Road Yard in Milwaukee. Interchange train. And not all the time, but often these trains were quite long, and of course you had the grade outside of Fond du Lac, Byron Hill, and although it may need help every so often up over that hill, a pusher, other than that it would lug cars to nobody's belief. Eventually the locomotive found its way out to Minnesota, working in heavy yard switching, that type of work. And it was eventually retired. It never transferred onto the Canadian Pacific's roster. It was gone by that time. So again, delivered without MU capability and perfect for branch line service. They had another locomotive that I also modeled, the 2380. Entirely different animal. That was an Alco based on the RSD design. Again, a 6-axled unit, and that was an RSC3 is what they called it. Another kind of oddity. So we'll look at that one in some other video down the road. Building this thing in HO scale turned out to be a little more of a challenge than I thought it would be, and that's thanks to my own maybe carelessness. The original locomotive was started with the newer Walther's SD9, fine running locomotive, and I bought it as an undecorated, so all the detail parts had to go on, and of course it needed the custom paint. But the project kind of hit a snag when in removing the trucks and the fuel tank and the motor and everything to mill down that smaller fuel tank. One of the clips that holds the truck onto the bolster broke, and I don't know if it was a faulty part, but it was probably my fault. Anyways, that bolster broke, and I had of course had several other Proto 2000 SD9s in stock here through estates and just part purchasing in anticipation of this project. Always good to have a spare. Well, it turns out I should have bought two of the Walther ones, because they changed enough on that newer locomotive that the parts off of the Proto 2000 locomotive back from the early 2000s no longer worked on the newer model. So what we wound up here with was a kind of a combination of the Walther's shell and all the newer detail parts, the nicer railings and such. And then underneath we had to use the original, or a P2K frame, and the P2K trucks, but that was mated up with the newer Walther's motor. The older motor in the P2K was, I would call it more of an Athearn style motor. Very smooth, but no doubt, at least on my copy, the Walther's motor was smoother and similar RPM, so I used it. The real trick, of course, then is how to mount the motor. If you're familiar, I'm sure most of you are, with the way these things mount, it's normally 4 screws or 4 holes in the bottom of the casting of the frame representing the fuel tank, and either screwed on or held on with some sort of a rubber material. Anyways, when you cut down that fuel tank, as you see, the bottom end of the motor sticks out kind of unrealistically underneath. And so instead of trying to figure out how to, build a whole new underframe, I thought, let's just raise that motor up a little bit. And since I wasn't putting a lot of fancy electronics or sound into it, it was just a matter of making sure the angles for the drive line would stay reasonably good. And sure enough, we got it raised up that, I'd say probably about 1/8 of an inch only. It had to come up. But, in HO scale driveline world, that's quite a bit. So I was a little bit paranoid that either the shafts wouldn't reach, or there'd be a bind of some sort. But we got lucky on this one, and I can say to anyone else attempting a project like this with either a Soo Line 2381 or something for their own railroad, that as long as you can live without a little bit of weight and without all the electronics stuffed inside, you can bring that motor up easy enough and make it look good from a side angle shot, as we see in some of the pictures here. Main issue with a locomotive like this, any undecorated really, unless it's a simple paint job, is of course getting it in paint. And in this case, I had my brother Marvin paint it. He volunteered early on when I first purchased it. Being a diesel modeler himself, he thought the idea would be great to build a classic Soo Line locomotive. He's done a few for me in the past, and so this one he jumped right in on. And of course, when it was time to do it, he was busy with other work. But he did juggle around his schedule of painting and got my project onto the bench. And after about 2 weeks of being on the struggle bus with a few of the issues related to decals, the locomotive came out of the shop, if you will, and it was in perfect shape, and very, very pleased with it, and very thankful he could, carry this project to its end. The main issue, in his opinion, and I share it, would be the long hood decal, the lettering on the side. I had several sets, and I honestly can't tell you if I got them from Don Manlick, DM decals, or if the Soo Society actually released the properly sized decals for these SD9s and GP9 units. To me, and to measurement, more importantly, the decals that are provided by Microscale for the long hood were not correct for this SD9. And I don't believe they're correct for the F7s either. Moot point, because the decals, if they are available right now in 2025, probably won't be in the future, unless we get behind the idea of model building again. Now, if you watch the channel here enough, you know that a model to me is still successful if it doesn't have the latest and greatest in sound and lighting. I appreciate models that are built as such, and especially the newer models, more modern locomotives, ditch lights and all of that. But I can gladly accept a locomotive that doesn't have step lights or running lights, or the best LED lighting and various effects. And the same with the sound. We'll just catch the SD9 in action along the branch line. A future video will feature all the various towns and what happens at each town, like I had done with the Oshkosh and Wapaka videos. Here it's coming across Highway 57 outside of Hilbert Junction. And the train goes past a farm and grazing field for the cows, eventually winding up past our rock quarry at Quarry, our lime quarry. And then into Manitowoc proper. Now, if you would be so kind to subscribe to my channel, I'd appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in today, and we'll see you down the rails.